Oh,
Three,
you
two,
ready?
one, go. Go.
Okay. Welcome to another Duke and Howie podcast. We're glad to have you. We're excited to have you. Um, we really like having you guys listen to what we have to say, and please, continue to engage us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep getting, following our conversations and things like that. Today, we're going to talk about the crazy, horrible political climate that we're living in right now. It's absolutely wretched. It's reminiscent of like a playground full of toddlers, running around, and like there's the one kid that's like not cool, or the group of kids, and they're all just like, last one to the fence is a rotten egg, and that like kid that's nerdy is really slow, and everyone just always beats him to the fence, and he's the rotten egg because he's different every single time. It's like, man, I feel like that's the political climate that we're in right now, with in regards to the you disagree with people's opinions, and all of a sudden you're the rotten egg. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
you can't just be a person with different way of thinking. You got to be a rotten egg because you're not like the rest of us. I don't know.
It's
What do you
kind of
think,
crazy.
Duke?
I think like it's really difficult because it's like a rotten egg, but in like 4 dimensions.
Wow.
Because, yeah, I mean, I I don't see a lot of the physical stuff going on in my life, but like my Facebook feed, man, is nuts. It's so crazy right now. People are going nuts. Like when that the MAGA kid thing happened, when he had the hat on, everyone was yelling at him.
Yeah.
Dude, people were going crazy.
Yeah, people are going crazy, and they weren't really quick to just. It wasn't. It's not like a with that kind of thing. They just kind of assume that that's how all people that think about that are pro Trump or wear that hat are. When in reality it's like there's 0.0003% of the population are racists that are kind of hidden away in the woods, and they don't know how to use cameras and stuff like that. And then there's the rest of the people that just think politically different than the other half of the country, and it's perfectly okay, and they're not
Yeah.
racist, and they're not out to get people, and they wear the hat. And I mean, dude, this morning I was on Facebook, and I saw somebody post this picture of a MAGA hat, and it said on it, this hat symbolizes racism and bigotry and xenophobia and hate. And if you wear this hat or associate yourself with anybody that wears this hat, you're basically saying that it's okay to hate everybody. And I'm like, that, like, what? Where did that come from? And dude, that's not the first time I heard that. I also heard, I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, and I really, really love watching Joe Rogan podcasts. And I was watching one recently where he was interviewing Barry Weiss, and they were saying the same stuff about the MAGA hat. I don't know if they were saying it. Maybe they were just saying that people are associating it with that stigma. But I'm like I think it's just it's absurd to think that everybody that is pro Trump or on the right is a bigot racist. Like you don't even know these people. How could you say that? And like you were saying, George, you step outside and there's no actual like action happening. Like there's not all these racists running around the streets just bashing people's skulls in for their ethnic, you know, uh, background, or that's the color of their skins. They're just It's just not the way that it is, and the media is sensationalizing something that hardly even exists. When really, in reality, there's like much bigger problems going on that are ignored, that
Yeah.
are way more ignored.
Well, I feel like, it's just really hard, man. The internet just puts everything under a microscope. And so you have these issues, and then the internet just blows them up, and so it's so weird how the mob like chooses one thing to be upset about and not the others. Like the Syrian refugee crisis is still happening, you know, and we don't hear anything else about that. It's like it's almost like there's this addiction that's just growing. I feel like it's just growing. You know what I mean? It's like we have one thing to be outraged over, and then now we need something even more hardcore.
Right.
We need something even closer. Do you think that you can? And this is something I think about. Like, can there be symbols? Like, I understand like the hood for the Ku Klux Klan is like a symbol of racism for sure.
Right. Absolutely. 100%.
But
It's awful.
who gets to decide that? And that's kind of been what I've been wondering. Like, is it because, you know, the KKK hood, the Klansman hood is terrible for all the horrible, awful, racist things that they've done. You know what I mean? Like, they took their ideology and they physically acted it out. And
Right.
and so that's
If
why it's
they
racist.
if they were a bunch of people that wore the same hoods and stuff like that, but did really good things all the time,
Yeah.
then it would not be aligned with that symbol. It wouldn't symbolize that, obviously. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
It has to do with the actions backed up behind. The symbol represents something.
Yeah, and I don't think the MAGA hat can be racist because, in my opinion, I don't think that they're doing these individuals that wear MAGA hats. I don't understand why people wear MAGA hats just because they look terrible. They're so bad, dude. Red hats, like who wears red hats?
They do look pretty. They're pretty tacky. You can you can get all different kinds though. But that seems to be the industry standard is the red one.
Well,
But
that's because Trump is just wearing it and like waving his fists and build the wall, has a MAGA hat.
But yeah, but with with the MAGA hat though, I mean like wearing the MAGA hat and basically saying that, hey, I voted for Trump because I agree with what he stands for, and what he stands for, people I don't think are actually very clear on. A lot of people are regurgitate what they're told he stands for, but nobody actually. It really concerns themselves with the nitty-gritty truths of things. And the media, I think, is actually responsible for the polarization in our culture. And I actually think it's a conspiracy, to be honest.
Oh, really?
And I'm not into conspiracy theories. I hate them. I don't like hearing about conspiracy theories. But it is so strange to me, the crap that the media makes up that there is absolutely no physical evidence for at all, that they relentlessly go after over and over and over again about this administration. And it's absurd, and it has pinned people against each other in ways that we have not seen in this country in a very, very, very long time.
Well, it's kind of crazy. It's on both sides, right? It's on both sides.
Totally.
And I think that I kind of agree with you. Conspiracy is a hardcore word. You say conspiracy and people are like running for the freaking woods. It's like,
no, yeah.
Alex Jones putting frogs, make the frogs.
Well, dude, here's the thing though. It's like people, and the reason that I think that is because you break it down into like, you look at it like, all right, what makes up like business, right? Yeah. There's people that own the businesses, right? There's business owners, and people that own their businesses, like they want to make sure their businesses are run a certain way. They want them to be successful. They have business agendas. They want to accomplish these things, right? And people own these media things. They're not these like amoebas like nothings that just people go in and say, this is my opinion.
Well, that's true. There are a lot of, even lately, I've seen a lot of people posting like from these news articles that look like fake. They look like people's blogs that they just write stuff on, and they're like, look at this news article, about Trump. And you go on it, and it just looks like someone's WordPress blog.
Yeah. But it's just not about truth anymore, man.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody at the top is like, they're thinking about, we have to destroy Trump. Like, no matter what, we have to destroy him. Like, that's a bad premise for journalists, dude. I don't think that's a really good, foundation for a news network to stand on. Any of them.
Yeah. Well, dude,
But
you got this kid or whatever that stood in front of the Native American, and then the narrative was created, right?
right,
And all of a sudden, that kid was like, people were like, somebody needs to kill this kid. The celebrities and public figures were speaking against him and speaking out against him and saying horrible things about him, like this kid looks punchable, which is like 3 steps away from saying, "Hey, go punch this kid and other people that believe in the same thing." It's
right,
like it's like um, like what there was a time when, like, I think that this is something that I really like. Jordan Peterson said. Um, he said that there's both political parties are necessary, and and the beauty of each party is that they counteract each other in a way that has made the country become one of the powers that it's been, and it really has been. We've really created something here that has helped the world, and it's amazing that it's a group of immigrants that have all come together, created this incredible um, system, and created this country, and we've been able to benefit the world so positively. And the beauty of it is like we have the conservatives who uh, are concerned about the economy, and they are traditional, and they want to make sure that we're always going upward and that we preserve our freedoms and things like that. And then you got the left, and the left says, that's all great, but there's people stacking up at the bottom of your system, and people stack up at the bottom of every system in the world, right?
yeah,
Um, we have our system is almost it's the better of all evils because less people stack up at the bottom of this system, and not every system is perfect, obviously, but the left goes, there's these people that are stacking up at the bottom, dispossessed. What do we do about this or these problems? And that's incredibly important as well. And so we have this, we want to grow the country, we want to be successful, we want to maintain the freedoms, right? But we also don't want to completely, we don't want to go tyrannical in one direction or the other, which is
right,
which is what happens to each logical extreme. You get the conservative, which we see has played out tyrannically with Adolf Hitler, obviously, and the place where the right goes too far is when they declare uh, racial superiority. That's when we know, that's a marker for when we know the right goes too far. And this is all stuff Jordan Peterson does lectures on, by the way. But right now we don't know when the left goes too far. Now we know things like what happened in Russia with Stalin and stuff like that. That was all left socialism and things like that. But we don't have like any real clear markers. And it's been since the 1960s since conservatives have been able to put those people in boxes and go, yeah, we're not associated with you, the racial people, the people that believe in racial superiority. We've been able to, since the 60s, have disassociated with those the reasonable right. And then but with the left, man, it's like, goodness gracious. I think when the left goes too far is when they start talking about needing to legislate speech.
yeah.
That's what
Well,
that's what,
it's kind of crazy, you think about it, and at this point, do they need legislation? I mean, the social pressure is so heavy.
what
I
do you mean?
mean, well, you know, going to jail or getting fined is a consequence of our legal system, but wouldn't having your life ruined by being doxxed and your personal information being released to mobs of angry, outraged, far left people, that to me would be far more scarier than getting a fine because I got because that's where we're at. That MAGA kid got doxxed. You know what doxxed is, right? Have you heard of that before?
Yeah. I it's when you go and you find information about people's past and you try to use it against them.
Right. And so he had like all his personal information leaked and stuff, and it wasn't even his information. It was a guy that was there, a kid that was there, is the wrong kid, and that's when he was
Oh
getting
my
all those
gosh.
death threats and stuff. Yeah, yeah. So the information was actually doxed, and that's scary, man, because the internet's vast. I mean, we're connected to billions of people, and if hundreds of thousands of those people are outraged, and they have your information now. That's kind of freaky. That's kind of freaky.
Right.
And so at this point,
Not
it's
just that, but you have people of influence saying, go out and hurt these people, and we're just inching our ways to acceptance of like what's it called when somebody takes going out and doing justice on
vigilante.
yeah,
Vigilante.
vigilantes, which you got Antifa, anti-fascists, which is hilarious because they're actual fascists
Right.
themselves for doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
But and that's just ridiculous. But like so and hates and so one of the big things that is a conversation right now is hate speech. People are talking about hate speech, and that they I'll tell you something crazy. I was in the kitchen with my brother and my sister, and I was talking about how they're talking about wanting to legislate speech, and I was like, they're doing this, and I said, can you believe that they want to legislate speech or whatever? And my mom and my brother were under the impression that that hate speech was illegal already, that it was punishable. Like,
oh, really?
they were already under the impression that you could be punished for saying hateful things. And the thing about, like, here's the crazy thing about that, by the way. Who decides what's hateful? It's like, who decides what's hateful is the media right now.
At this point, I mean, it's the media,
so
it's the mob.
Yeah, dude, if I went out and said something, like if I said something political, that I was like, I aligned myself with something politically, and it was not what the mainstream media agreed with, the narrative would be that I was this horrible, awful racist.
Right.
And that would be considered hate speech, and I would be able to be thrown in jail because I am pro-life or something like that, right? So I'm pro-life. Well, you just hate all women and you hate women's rights. So, so being pro-life is hate speech. It would be, and that's the logical direction of this goes. Who decides what is and what is not hate speech? And right now, there's no speech that is legislated. There's no speech that's illegal, but you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire or bomb if there's not a fire or a bomb.
I mean, there's
that's
a time
illegal.
and a place.
That's
like if you're chasing after somebody yelling racial slurs at them, that is illegal. That is harassment. Like if you're pursuing them.
Right.
I mean, there are laws that protect people. I just, what really frustrates me about the whole thing is if you have these two options. The option one is culture, which is fluid, right? It's ever changing. Culture is always changing and growing and evolving and devolving in many ways. And if culture is the one that determines hateful speech, then
it's relative.
It's absolutely relative, even depending on region. If I'm in the Midwest, speech is going to be a lot different here. People talk a lot differently. If you're in the military, and I'm not going to defend a lot of, some of the language in the military is hardcore. I have a lot of military friends, dude. They're crazy, but they're fun people and they're hilarious. Right. But it's going to be different there. And there's no, if we were to choose between legislation that restricted speech based on how it makes people feel versus being able to say anything that we want to say, and reap the consequences of our words, which is really where we should be at.
Absolutely. And even to take on the responsibility of deciding, whether or not you're going to accept what somebody else is saying.
Right.
Like, you don't have to accept somebody's opinion, right? But you certainly, you should be afraid to even think about the territory of taking their ability to say that away from them.
Yeah. Well, it's the age-old Disney Channel story arc. Everybody wants to belong. They just want to be accepted, and they want to belong and feel loved. And I do feel like this is a symptom of people that just want to belong and they want to be loved and they want to be a part of a group. They feel cast out in some way or another. And so the way that they do that is if they agree with people, like even if they don't believe it, because I've talked to a lot of left-leaning people that don't necessarily really believe what they're saying, but they would never say that publicly. But if all you had to say to be loved and be handed a torch to burn houses down was, you can't say something. You can't say that word. It's offensive. I can't even think one off the top of my head.
Think about this, dude. This is another. I'm going to quote Jordan Peterson a couple times because I really like the stuff that he says, because he talks a lot about what you and I are talking about right now. Right. And what he's in one of the things that he also talks about, one of the things he said was, so, how do you expect to talk to anybody without offending them once during a conversation?
Right.
So you talk to one person. I can't offend you while I'm talking to you. Okay, whatever. Let's just say I can't offend you. What about 100 people? You think you're going to be able to say anything in an hour that's not going to offend one person out of all of those 100 people? What about 1,000? What about 1,000 people? All these different opinions, different backgrounds. Everybody is just super. It just comes down to it, and just the distilled individual 1,000 times, and you're not going to say one thing that offends any of those people. What about 1,000,000 people? It's just absurd. And the reality is that you have to risk being offensive in order to think.
Yeah. Well, people are afraid, man. I think people are really cowards. I think people are cowards when it comes to confrontation. If you have an idea and you disagree with it, then you talk to people about it. You learn more about the things that you disagree with. You know what I mean?
Right. That's right. That's one way. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think people, specifically in this day and age, they're confused, I believe, between being offended and they're afraid to be wrong. I think they're confused between those two, because when they're confronted with an opposing opinion, they shut down. They shut down. They dig in. What's that called? Confirmation bias, right? Is that what that's called? No, not confirmation bias. What's the logical fallacy? When confronted with facts that oppose your own, you dig in.
I don't know.
Oh man, it's right there on the tip of my tongue.
Sounds like dogma to me, though.
Well,
you believe something that's not grounded in fact. You know, to some
And-
degree, political ideology is not grounded in fact. It's grounded in bias. And like with to go along with what you were saying before this, you've talked to people that have political beliefs, but you can tell by talking to them that they don't actually believe that. It's because they're regurgitating the narrative of their ideology. They don't actually own an idea. They don't own that idea. It's a regurgitation of the ideology.
Well, you know how many people I know that are going to vote for Trump, but they'll never say it. They would never say it, but I know they will. They've told me, and I've because this idea that if you said that, I'm going to vote for Trump, I'm not saying that I am. I don't know who I'm going to vote for at this point. But if you said that, dude, the mob would come out of the woodworks. It'd be like you're walking down the road, right, hanging out with a buddy, and you're like, dude, I'm thinking about voting for Trump. And the next thing you know, someone's going to come out and club you over the head and drag you off and string you up. And you're going to be taken to the middle of a forest, and there's going to be people with, like, torches, and they're going to be poking you. And
oh, dude, but they're going to do that to you because their worldview, to some degree, is that those kinds of people that vote for that vote for Trump, not even that kind of person, but specifically Trump, are awful, horrible people that are deserving of punishment or they're just wrong, and we don't even want to hear what they have to say. It's the same thing that radical Islamist terrorists believe. They believe that they're 100% right about what they believe, and they don't want to hear what anyone else has to say, and that and any other way of thinking is punishable by death, and they embody that to the logical extreme. And that is the logical extreme of intolerance.
Yeah.
Um, and this is a nation where we have really really done something miraculous and incredible. And it irks me so bad, like when Thanksgiving comes around and all people do is complain about how awful we are, and that we stole land and all this. But like, it's just so incredibly complicated, and there's so many real facts of the whole thing, and everyone just wants to create this bad narrative about this country. And
Yeah.
but in reality, it's like you people have absolutely no clue what the hell they have right now, and it's damn shameful.
Yeah.
And and I'm
Well, a lot
really
of
really
people,
hope
a
that.
lot of things, Noah, man, is like people don't have reference, a point of reference.
Well, dude, their
Like,
point of reference is the media.
well, but even individuals living in poverty, like I grew up in extreme poverty, small in a small city in California, and um, I grew up in a very poor home, and so even people that grow up in poverty here have no idea what poverty is like in a developing nation.
Sure.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's
That level
relative.
of it's absolutely relative. So the point of reference isn't really there. Like our poverty is some of the best poverty in the world. And I'm not saying our poverty is awesome. I'm not saying poverty is great, but I'm saying our forms of poverty in the US are the best forms of poverty. People still have access to clean water unless you live in Flint, which I heard Elon Musk is doing something with that, by the way.
He is. He is.
Yeah.
It's awesome. At least for the school system. He's
Yeah.
built some filters. I bet. Oh man, I hope that he built like crazy like Tesla filters.
Dude.
They're all future looking, and put them on the schools, and now they kids can drink the water.
Yeah, they can use the water fountains. I think I read it. They haven't been able to use them in like 2 years,
Yeah.
so they can drink out of the water. Anyhow, we do have access to clean water though. We don't have to put bleach in it. We don't have to carry it in buckets from lakes. It's we have access to soap, and so what's crazy to me is that when you don't have a point of reference, it's really easy to be unhappy with the way that things are. And I'm not saying this is the if I was to say that the left was to have any role, the left's role is to ensure that we're constantly progressing. Like we're never fully content, and that we're moving forward in a lot of different ways,
Right.
right? But
Well,
that
yeah,
what Yeah, go ahead.
and well, I agree with you totally, and the right also wants to move it in a way. It's two different layers of movement though. You can't move too far with one without the other,
Right.
because that's where the tyrannical extreme
Yeah.
can emerge, right? From too far of a polarization, because we
Right.
need each other as much as we might dislike each other.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that people really need to really try to understand that. You know,
I think that extreme progress, like progress that happens too fast, is not a good thing. Like it reminds me of when I was growing plants in aquaponics. Remember when we built that aquaponics system, and
yeah,
sometimes like some of the plants grew so fast that they weren't able to support themselves. They would just fall over and crinkle. They had far too much access to some nutrient or another, and they just grew way beyond their ability to hold themselves up and bear good fruit. And
yeah.
I think that that progress is great, but I don't think we need to progress into dangerous, uncharted territory too fast. Like,
Well, yeah, I hear you there. Well, that's what. So yeah, the tyrannical part of it is definitely when you give control over to one side, you give them everything, and it's not a good person either, and it's usually wrapped up into bad ideology. And that whatever we're moving too quickly in one direction, it's not even that we're moving too quickly in one direction. It's that there is half the country disagrees with the other half of the country, and one and they've created a narrative that is not based in fact about the other side. And
yeah,
I think that the major issue with what's happening in society right now is that people are not concerned about truth anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing is they're not cooperative. They're not cooperative for like no reason. Like people don't want to, I think there should be at least some forms of, what's the word I'm looking for, man? It's right there. Like, when you work together, compromise. There should be some forms of compromise.
Oh, that's a great example of what's going on with the government shutdown right now.
Yeah.
It's like everybody is blaming Trump for it, but it's actually both parties. Like I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's a great thing at all, and I'm not saying that Trump is innocent. But like if you've ever watched a discussion between Nancy Pelosi and Trump and Schumer, you would know that it is takes two to tango, and
Right.
it's both their faults, and you can't just blame Trump for it all. And I'm certainly not saying that Trump's innocent, but the Democratic Party it's like there's no compromising happening at all. And what's crazy is that the Democrats also wanted the wall, and they believe in border security. You know what I mean? I got to say, one of the things that I agree with the left on, and that I would say that I am more left in is immigration, because I don't think that we should be keeping people out of the country, and I don't think that we should. I think we should probably be doing more with the refugee crisis, and I think that we definitely should never shut down our borders. The thing that makes America great, and the thing that we've founded on, is immigration. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't. There's fragile elements to an economy and into a country structure, and those things are shattered, then everybody suffers. So you have to have borders, and you have to have border security, but you can't. Doesn't mean we're not going to let anybody in. It's just to happen
Yeah.
in a way that's not going to shatter it's got to happen in a way that it's not going to hurt everybody, which it will, and people don't think about that because they're
I'm
not
pretty,
concerned about the truth.
I agree. I agree completely. It kind of reminds me of Robert Kiyosaki when he's talking about how money is not going to mean anything in the future. Like it's losing value every day because people aren't concerned with the truth, the reality of like our budget spending as a nation.
Oh
The
yeah.
more we go into debt, the less value our dollar has. And so, you know, it's kind of madness to me. Um, this whole situation. Let's take like the government shutdown and the lack of compromise and people. The truth is this, and it's a really hard truth. Is that what if because of other spending we don't have $5 billion to spend? And I'm not saying we can get $5 billion. I'm just saying it's probably not a good idea to spend any money at this point in time until we figure out what the heck we're spending money on, because it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a whole separate conversation. But I just kind of
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of truth that, even we're missing out on that we don't know. There's so many things that we don't know.
But we don't know anything, man. We're a couple of idiots babbling on about our opinions right now.
Right. And so, I really do think though that both parties right now are so far gone.
Oh my gosh, dude! If imagine this, because we talk about individual
Yeah.
responsibility. What if we talked about responsibility at every level? What if it started with the party going, you know what, we're going to take responsibility for all the problems, even if it's not like your fault exactly. Like I'm sure there's a lot of things um, that the left might feel is a problem that was caused by conservatives, right? And maybe they're right, and maybe the right has caused these problems that the left doesn't want to take responsibility for. But
Yeah.
what if they did? What if we all decided? What if we decided to take responsibility for the problems in America that aren't even our own, and then you go down through the hierarchy, or you go down through the structure down to the individual, and you place responsibility at every layer, and then
Right.
it's the individual's responsibility to fix it and make it work. That would change the culture. It would change the way of thinking. It would be, instead of a blame game, which it is right now, it is a horrible, awful blame game, man. You ever been around blamers, man? Everyone
I
blaming all their problems on other people,
Dude, it is pretty hardcore
on the
though.
right and the left.
Yeah, it is pretty hardcore, man. I I really think that um I really think it's going to be a long time before people kind of understand their responsibility because they everything's approached so deductively. So, they're like, oh, I'm a Democrat. So they're like, what does a Democrat believe? Tick, 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 tick. Okay, these are all the things I believe. And I really do think that beliefs should be inherent. So like if you believe certain things, you need to figure out where you align with people. I think a lot of people would be surprised that they're probably a lot more moderate in their beliefs. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to be pretty, they're going to swing both ways. But I think a majority of people are going to end up moderate. And I think when they understand that, then they'll have a little bit more context for how they're supposed to interact as an individual and what their responsibilities look like. So, because I'm still trying to figure that out. Like, I know that first and foremost, my individual responsibility is to ensure that, my family's doing good. They're being taken care of.
Right.
That's first. That if families aren't together, if they fall apart, then the nation's going to fail.
Right.
That's like the first warning sign of a nation that's going to fall.
Right.
And so I got to make sure that should be our first, dude. That should be our first.
Well, was it Abraham? Abraham's the father of nations, right?
Yeah.
And so and what was it that it said that all of the descendants of Abraham or Abraham's family was in perfect order or something like that.
Yeah.
But I forget. But in the same sense, it's like, Abraham was the father of nations, right? And it said that, man, I wish I don't know if I could say it because I don't have the verse, but it's something along those lines. And I agree with you. I think it comes down to the family. It comes down to the individual. Because
what's that guy I listened to? Is it Jesse Lee Curtis? Is that the guy?
Yeah.
I kind of like, and it's really controversial, but I really like where he comes from to a certain degree, and it can be applied to every single, circle of people. And I think that's his point. Degeneracy begins at the family. Like, if you want to know why a specific group of people are viewed as degenerates, then just look at their family model. How are their families functioning? Are their families together? Do children have dads? Do they have mothers? Do they have a cohesive family? And if not, that can explain a lot of what's going on within a culture of people. I knew growing up in the ghetto where I grew up, there wasn't a lot of families that were together. It was just chaos, absolute chaos. They called us free range kids, like chickens. We're free range kids because we were just running around the neighborhood from the time we got out of school until dinner time, doing whatever we wanted, man. Breaking into trailers and stuff. I was like 6.
Gosh.
Yeah. With a group, it was like a group of us. There's like 13, 14 kids. We'd all run around doing whatever we wanted. And we didn't have strong families. We didn't have families that were together, And I think if you want to see, and the reason I'm saying this is because that's our first responsibility. I would say across the board.
To get your family in order.
Get your family in order. And if you don't have a family yet, then be the person, be the man or be the woman that can have their family in order when it's time.
Right.
And work on being
prepare
that person.
Prepare yourself for the flood, because there will be. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, dude, and just bringing it back to the climate of the country and all the outrage and all the speech legislation, the desire for it, and all the echo chamber that we're living in that seems to be, causing problems. It's like, it's a lot easier to hear what the media is saying, and it's a lot easier to sit there and listen to something that's out searching for you,
right?
Because that's what it is. It's geared to go out and find you, right? That's what the whole point of the advertising and the marketing. It's out there to find you, and you're going to be exposed to it. The hard thing to find is the truth, because you have to dig for it. It's not obvious all the time. It's not obvious that Trump is the cause of all the problems in the country. It's not obvious that every single conservative is a racist, and it's not obvious that that the left is right about everything, you know, and it's not
Right.
obvious if the border it's not obvious what's going on with the border. It's not obvious what was going on with the MAGA hat kid, right?
Right.
That was a perfect example. And it's like, but if you're not concerned about truth, and you don't wire your mind to think that way, you're gonna adopt an ideology, and all those ideas and those things that you adopted are not going to be yours. They're something else's, and you are a regurgitator and a perpetuator of that idea. And that
Right.
idea might be a parasite.
I think that that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Is where are you getting your ideas from? You know, and I think that would be, as an individual, that is another responsibility that we have, is always evaluating, why am I thinking this way? Why do I
Yeah.
believe these things? Like, is it because of peer pressure, or is it because it's right? You know,
Oh,
and
absolutely. You should definitely pursue truth. And you should think about what you're saying. It's like, do you actually believe the things that you're saying? Here's a definition of ideology, for those who might not know. An ideology is a collection of normative beliefs and values that an individual or group holds for other than purely epistemic reasons. The term was coined by Antony Destute Tracy in 1790. Here's another definition. I think this one's better. A system of ideas and ideals, especially one which forms the bias of economic or political theory and policy. And that's exactly what we're talking about right now. People embody an ideology, and an ideology is also, like a group identity. It's like, or it can be. So you identify under a group, and the right and the left are ideologies. They have their ideals, and they have their theories about how things will work.
right,
And right now, the media, we have it's just the people that own the media
yeah,
are follow they adopt a left leaning ideology, or a left ideology, and there's ideologies, little tiny ones, that fall under each side as well. This is exactly what happens when you adopt an ideology, is you automatically pin yourself against the other ones, because your ideals are not the same as other ideologies' ideals. And if you guys disagree on that fundamentally, then you're tribe. You're a tribe that's against another tribe at that point. And right now, America is to some degree tribalized, and we're descending into this polarization that's super unhealthy, and it's unhealthy because it's producing unhealthy results. People, the way that people are behaving and reacting to situations that normally any rational person would not react to that way. Is totally and completely unhealthy. Like the way that people are outraged about the MAGA hat kid. That's an unhealthy response. That's a symptom. That's a symptom of something terrible going on in the country, and it needs to be diagnosed. But nobody wants to diagnose it.
no. Well,
And
here's my theory on that is, I really do feel like everybody is so, because when you're like pointing your finger at someone else and you're blaming, right? So we're back here in the
okay,
conversation, when you're blaming, when you're a blamer and you're pointing at somebody and you're yelling at them, and you're the reason why this country is still in shambles on both sides. This is both sides. It's really
right,
hard to evaluate yourself at that point, because you have to defend yourself. So you don't really have time to evaluate yourself, because you're setting up these walls and these barriers and these counter arguments to things that you may not even really believe, because you don't know where you got that belief or that information,
right,
because the group has it. But that's kind of where all these groups of people are, and specifically, and I think Trump is a great example. And before that, Obama was actually a great example as well. I think a lot of presidents probably are. Obama and Trump were the ones that got the full blast of Facebook and social media. You know, the other presidents didn't really have that. So, and the reason I'm saying this is, people will hate everything about those individuals, everything they say and everything they do, not for real reasons, for fake reasons, for reasons that aren't true. They don't exist. Just because they hate the person.
right. well, for reasons that go against their ideology, that is grounded in social bias.
Right.
It's not and ideals and theories that are created and formed for a group and not an individual.
And they're important. These things I think are very, very important, man. I feel like it's important to have these conversations about, homosexuality, these conversations about racism, these conversations, like these social biases are important, but we need to be in a stance of wanting to learn about it together and grow together about it from
Yeah.
whatever our ideology, religion, culture, whatever these backgrounds are. We need to talk about these things and how do they function within this nation. And
Right.
that's not where we are right now, and that sucks, man. That's how I like. My heart hurts, man, because we're so busy screaming insults at each other. And dude, the media is a huge, huge.
Well, they're perpetuating it, and they're throwing the gasoline on the fire, man.
Yeah. Well, and
There, in
that.
fact, if you want to blame a lot of the issues going on right now, if you want to blame, you know, the you could, well, here I am blaming, but I mean, look at what the media is doing, and I am blaming the media for a lot of the issues and the culture that is the toxic culture that is become so prevalent in the country right now, and I think it is our responsibility to stand up against it
Right.
because we do see it going in a tyrannical way, and it's sad because the media should be something that we could depend on to give us the truth that we don't in our daily lives have the time and resources to go out and constantly be searching when we have to make decisions on who we want to be president and
Right.
who we want this for. It's like we're looking at them as a source of truth, like a hero, you know, like or we need them for that reason. They're supposed to be for the people,
Yeah.
and that's why I disagree with Trump when he says, when he's like fake news, you can't listen to anything that they say, even though I understand where he's coming from. I disagree with that because we should have a media, and the media had plays a significant role in our country, and it has. But man, I feel like they've really fallen off the the wagon here, man. And I don't feel like they're dependable or credible. And the reason I feel that way is because you keep getting these things and these stories that they're not even worried about are true or not. They're just trying to be the first ones to post it.
Well,
You know?
the thing is when you're talking to somebody and they're trying to get something out of you, they're trying to manipulate and they're trying to like distort. You call it narratives. You hate narratives when people create narratives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like a narrative is dishonest.
And when
It can be dishonest. It's easy
yeah,
to be dishonest with narratives.
yeah, when you create like justifications for things in order to try to be right, like
And
justifications
that
based,
nobody can argue with.
right?
That right.
And I just feel like the media, that's what they're doing. They're trying to manipulate people. Like when you read articles in the New York Times, if you are not wondering what is this article trying to manipulate me to feel, if you don't think that way, you're a
Probably
victim.
gonna yeah.
You're a victim because that's where media is today. There is no objective journalism anymore. It doesn't exist. Not in the United States, anyways. If you want to, even the BBC, I've watched a lot of the stuff that they post, all of their new stuff, and a lot of it's the same way. It's like we have started a revolution in journalism that is not good. I don't think it's good at all. You know, I want to go back to like one line journalism, like where if it can't be summed up in one line, then it's not a real news article and a
Right.
headline.
Right. Yeah, man. It's been crazy, but I think it's time to start wrapping this up.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean uh it's good to talk about these things. It's good to get these things out there, and we're and I definitely have been more in the pursuit of truth lately, and it's been really disappointing to realize that so many people around you just genuinely are not concerned about the truth.
Right.
And it's disheartening to see the nation slip into that spiral of things, and the polarization. It's not, there's nothing healthy about what's happening right now. It's,
I do think that there's hope. And so I think there's hope. Yeah, I think that there is hope because people aren't always going to be this way. We have new technology, which is going to bring on a whole new era. You know, we're in the information era, and people are going to adjust to that, man. It's going to be hard, but we're going to get to a place where, you know, the media and journalistic outlets are going to be so held to such a high standard of accountability for their facts, but on both sides. And we're just not there yet. You know, it was like AOL chat rooms. You remember that? Did you ever use those back in the day? You can go into an AOL chat room and you're like ASL, and you'd be like, I was 9. I would say 12M Cali, you know. And anyhow, you know, and those rooms that's what started To Catch a Predator. Actually, was AOL.
really,
Because, yeah, those rooms were rife with child predators, and so, you know, and so they shut it down because they were like, oh man, we can't control this.
wow.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing that happened with Tumblr recently. They removed all. I was reading an article about this on Reddit. They removed all pornography from Tumblr because they couldn't keep control over it.
I never had a Tumblr, so I didn't even know that there was.
I didn't even know. I don't even know what it's for. If you know what Tumblr's for, please let us know in the comments because
I hear about it all the time.
I know it's a thing, but I guess you could put porn on it, and
it's the mistress of memes.
they couldn't control the porn. They couldn't control what was being posted because it was all crowdsourced.
Wow.
And so, you know, the FBI came a knocking, man, and they're like, I'm guessing that it kind of, the conversation went like, hey, Tumblr, hey, you got a child porn problem, figure that out, you know. And they're like, hey, it's not us, man, it's them, you know.
Yeah.
And then they went back on their website and were like, we got to take down porn, guys, no more porn.
Oh,
You guys went too far. You guys have fallen too far. And I'm glad that happened.
yeah.
I'm stoked. If that was the case. At the same time, though, I feel like, you know, we are going to correct. Like we are over. I don't want to overreact to this era that we're in. So I
we don't
like,
overreact.
But we want to make people aware. Pursue the truth. You know, research everything. If you're going to read an article from a news outlet, research it. Look for sources. Click on the little links. A lot of times, like I've read New York Times articles where they had links, you know, to their facts or whatever that were hyperlinked in the article. And a lot of times it would like be linked to like a Washington Post article about the same thing. And that was like their fact.
Oh.
You know, so be very careful about your sources and your media, and
even the way that that the numbers are done for statistics and stuff, like they can just be done in a certain way that's dishonest to get a certain result. And so and you should figure out how the numbers were done, and if it was a credible way of doing it. If you're genuinely concerned about the truth, and if you're not, I would suggest that you should really think about that. You should be concerned about truth.
Well, there was touching base on the numbers. There was that guy, man, I can't remember his name. I should really memorize it because it's so funny. They did the peer-reviewed articles, you know, and they went on the Joe Rogan podcast, dude. That was hilarious. And they just talked about how they did peer-reviewed articles. And they, oh crap, I forgot to plug in my laptop. And they literally copy pasted Mein Kampf into a peer-reviewed article, a scientific journal.
Yeah.
And they replaced a lot of the words with in Mein Kampf, you know, they took out Nazis, of course, and Aryans and stuff. And they replaced them with these new buzzwords that we have in outrage media. and they got published.
Yep. A lot. They got
Yeah,
published a lot, and they got reviewed, and they got
by scientists.
yeah, by scientists and journalists thinking that they were real, and they were
Yeah,
about crazy things. One of them was about dog rape culture. The
right.
guy that spent he's the guy that spent 10,000 hours at a dog park watching dogs hump each other, with and without their owners around, and and like it was hilarious is what it was, but it's an incredible demonstration of exactly how easy it is to be misled.
Well, and think about those scientists and those journalists, right? That like they have this inherent this belief, right? This prejudice inside of them that is so extreme that they're not even willing to question an article being submitted to their publication.
Right.
You know, and that's crazy to me. These are the greatest thinkers of our age,
Right.
right? And they're like they can't even get beyond this thing inside of them that is so outraged for whatever reason, to fact check, you know, and the reason I say that is because you're in good company. You know, if you don't do that, I would suggest you start doing it. I'm not perfect. Howie's not perfect. We consistently are wrong.
Yeah.
But
My first reaction to the MAGA hat kid was negative. I was like, oh, that kid, man, just crap in the bed for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone.
And so anyhow, you know, if we were to end on any note, just check your facts, man. Check your facts. This outrage culture is getting ridiculous. I'm losing friends, all not because I have opposing beliefs, but because I just want to know why they believe what they believe. Like, tell me why. Don't be that way. Don't be the friends that I've lost. And I'm not even doing it in a rude way. I'm just saying, hey, why do you believe that? Where'd you get that from? Where are those facts? Right?
Yeah.
I try to do it over a few beers. That usually helps.
Could either go really well or really bad.
Right. Fists or words? Yeah. You pick one, you know, at this point. No, hey, and that's the reality. Don't be a victim. Don't be a victim of the media. It's kind of
Be a victim.
All right, man. Well, I'll do the outro. You do the intro.
Cool.
Hey, you guys are amazing. You're incredible. Thank you. Stick around. Subscribe. Like. I don't even know if the notification bell is still a thing, but I see all the popular YouTubers doing it, so I'm going to do it too. That's me not fact checking. But if there's a notification bell, go ahead and hit that so you know when we are posting videos. You're incredible. Stay incredible. We love you.